Hello everybody. Today I decided to make my video in kind of a dark and spooky place because I want to talk about industrial music and post-traumatic stress. Now over my past couple videos I started touching on the subject a little bit. When I went out to see my goose, I noticed he had come under attack a few years ago and he's healing up from that wound, but now he's a little different. So I kind of pointed that out as I was getting into I've been having my own little symptoms or something where I've been going in and out of visionary state, and then it kind of got to where I was having a hard time getting along with my friends down in Denver, so I ended up moving up here to Montana to stay with my friend Rosie because she was sort of a good therapist for me. She was somebody I could just sit here and talk about it, and she's somebody that's dealt with her own kind of trauma. She's somebody that's been put in a wheelchair by a really bad work accident, and she's just been a really good spiritual support for me and really has helped to kind of raise my spirit a lot and do a lot of good for me in that way. So that's why I'm up here in Montana, and that's why I'm up here. And so she had a little boyfriend named Gary, about her age, and he was a metal scrapper, and what he likes to do is bring home things made of metal and just destroy them here. So I'm going to show you in Gary's garage. Yeah, so this scrap metal here, so this is what I've inherited from Gary, so now I can take it to the recycler and do something with it myself. So you guys, I got lots of tools and lots of saws and things in here. So I have everything I need and everything I don't need. So anyways, you guys, today happens to be the 23rd day of the 9th month of the year, and 9 is a number for higher spirituality and vibration, and 23 is a number for magic. And who that makes me think of? Genesis Peorage. Now, Genesis died of cancer at the age of 70. Like a lot of rock stars, it's really hard to get past 70. And before he died, he had a few near-death experiences, and one thing he said about that is he really hates it because then he experiences all of his post-traumatic stress from his past lives. And I thought, well, that's really interesting confirmation, because I was kind of saying the same thing before, that if we reincarnate by any chance, we may be a kind of people who have lifetimes of trauma that is catching up with us now. And so now that we're in a more peaceful period, like myself, I feel like I'm here in the United States, here in the eye of the storm, where nothing's really caving in on me. This gives me a chance now to do spiritual healing. Now, something we want to think about is what all started industrial music. Well, it happened by accident. They had an industrial accident, right? And a big part of what started industrial music was the friendship they had and the conversations they had. These people were trippers, okay? Industrial music is part of psychedelic music, and if you break down what psychedelic means, it means soul building. Industrial music is soul music. Okay, so I think it's good therapy. And for us, if you're one of the people who are meant to have it in your life, but for the people who don't, it might actually be traumatizing. So not necessarily good for everybody. But and another thing we want to expand on is it's part of something bigger. Industrial music is over when they closed up the doors to industrial records, is what they say, but somehow that spirit still lives on, and that spirit has lived beyond industrial music. And before that, we had the Beat Generation, we had the hippies, and at the heart of their cultural revolution was rock and roll music. And since then, there's been some kind of underground rock and roll music coming along, and eventually punk music coming along, and then industrial, which is more of an electronic kind of punk music. And so, these people are all making underground music because something's wrong with the mainstream. The mainstream is polluted, so we need an alternative form of music. So there's been all kinds of colorful alternative music. And along with industrial music, other bands like Wire and Joy Division, all kind of sharing in this type of I kind of feel like we're all living in the aftermath of the wars and stuff. If you look at these British bands and stuff, these people are definitely living in the aftermath of the wars, and that kind of influences their whole agenda. Look at the people who started industrial music. There were a lot of people born in the 50s, like my dad, So that's why I feel like, I'm more of a second, industrial music is a secondhand experience for me, because there's the people that were making the music, the people that were there, the people that were buying it when it was coming out. And then there's people like me. I pretty much listen to industrial music at my dad's stereo down in the Florida Keys, where it's all nice and sunny and happy and touristy. So I didn't live in Manchester, England, where it's all depressing, and or Detroit, Michigan. We could have stayed in Michigan. I'm from Port Huron, Michigan, just north of Detroit, and we left there when I was like 6 years old in 1981. And when we left there, we left behind our music scene. And so, like, my dad's house was the only place that we really listened to industrial music, like nobody else. Like, so there was a word for it as dad's music, or my cousins call it Uncle Jim's music. So, anyways, so it's kind of fun to reflect on what industrial music was about and why it's important to me. And one thing I want to point out is the last thing you want to do is start another industrial band. Hopefully, like I think something that Genesis George really hoped was that he would be an inspiration. And it hit me one day, Genesis, he's like an art teacher for everybody. And I got proof when he actually had a college course where he taught a class on being an artist shaman. So shamanism, there's a key word. Now, what is shamanism to do with? It's to do with the soul. It's to do with perception and awareness. So shamanism and music. So industrial music's about awareness, coming face to face. So one thing I want to talk about is carrying that torch. Now, I've only had one dream about Genesis Peorage, and he lived in this little cottage behind a big mansion, and when me and him met, we were so happy to see each other. We kind of hugged each other and fell down and just rolled up and down on his bed. And the other thing I've seen is more like I was sitting there just kind of daydreaming, and I could see in my mind's eye, like, let's say there's like all these people just standing in a long line. It looked like there was kind of like this big circle of people, and Genesis was like the next one over, and they were handing this big ball around. It was kind of like a big ball that like had a self-luminescent exterior, and then it was handed to Genesis, and then it was handed to me. Now, I'm not saying I'm ready to take his place or do his job, but what it's telling me is that we're carrying a torch of some kind, and that in the industrial music community, I like to think that we're people who want to come face to face with truth. We want to we value things like genuinity, authenticity, this type of things. We don't like pretentiousness. Let's cut to the chase. So this is the kind of community I like. And of course, it's ever changing. Today we have something slightly different, and I kind of think some of that drive is diminishing. So I was talking about, we've been part of a cultural revolution, but some of that's diminishing because some of our needs are being met. Like, we are getting the right to have different colored hair. You can have a mohawk. You can be a guy with long hair. You can be a girl with short hair. You can be a guy in a dress, and you can change your sex and your sexual orientation. So there's a lot of liberties that we're giving each other now. Now, what you got to understand is the freedom we have is the freedom we give each other. We can't wait for some entity to give us that freedom. However, at the same time, we are still living in the constraints of these controlling entities, and we are still facing threats being caused by them. So we might be a bunch of happy hippies making things right and loving each other. But if the powers that be decide to have a nuclear war, there's not a lot we can do about that. And so this is probably something that's on a lot of people's mind when you're watching the news and you're hearing about Russia and China. Is like, when are they gonna start a big war? And well, hopefully they don't, but it's a possibility. And so I feel like industrial music has kind of talked a little bit about the post-traumatic stress caused by warfare and caused by the Industrial Revolution, and we're coming out of it, but we might just have like one more wave of darkness to break through before we really get into the golden age. So the earth goes in and out of a golden age, and when it's between golden ages, it goes into a dark age. So we've been coming out of a dark age, and then we've been having it like little waves of darkness. So like, even though society's making a lot of progress and things are getting better and better, at the same time, the dark side seems to be getting worse and worse and scarier because they have stuff like nuclear weapons and germ warfare and all these really scary things. And so what it really amounts to as doing soul work goes is a thing I call spiritual survival, because whether you're going to live your life to the fullest and you're going to die of old age, or whether you're going to die a premature death, and especially if you know it's pending, this is where it really challenges us. So some of the things that are looming over us like the sword of Damocles is kind of scary. So you got to understand, your life could end at any minute. You could be just cruising along your normal thing and just boom, something falls on you, whatever. Or you might be somebody like Rosie. She had like a whole month or two to get ready to die, so she had plenty of time to get that smile and do this thing. So the art of dying is a term I hear with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I say the art of dying is the art of living, because what it has to do with is finding a state of mind. You have to learn to swim the karmic tide, so to speak. Otherwise, you just get swept away with the tides of the manifest. So you don't want that. You want to learn to swim, like that Tool song, learn to swim, learn to swim, learn to swim. So industrial music has a lot to do with spiritual survival and the healing of the soul. So I wanted to reach out to my industrial music family and kind of tell you where I'm coming from, and that I really hope to get a studio together. I hope to do all these things. And if I don't, I really hope that my insight has been helpful to you and that I can help everybody to what you call stay inspired. And you got to try to keep the fire in your heart. You got to stay full-hearted and don't buy into anything. And I say this for myself because I struggle with depression, and I know how it is to have suicidal thoughts. And so, I got to remember that's the dark side. That's, like, the dark side would love it if you killed yourself. The dark side would love it if I killed myself, because then that way I can't do you any good by being dead. So our agenda is to try to survive, and do your very best, even if the worst is coming to us. Spiritual survival, it's the understanding that when you die, there's life after death. So there's that. That's why we're getting this concept of life after death. It's like, hey, don't let somebody scare you to death, like, you gotta be brave for the whole rest of your life on some level. Not stupid brave, but not like, hey, don't live in fear. So yeah. Anyways, this is hopefully a good way to share some of my insight about who I am and what I hope to accomplish in our conversations. I think this is a fun concept to discuss, and I hope that I get other people who share my sentiment to join me. So you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.